Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Rolling Stories, the HR podcast brought to you by Rolling Arrays. I'm your host, Adrian Tan, and today we'll be talking about positive psychology. Promoting morale in the workplace has long been believed to boost productivity through the benefits, though the benefits may have a broader reach than simply the bottom line. Experts today suggest that positive psychology can impact everything from talent retention to better employee health. In fact, recent studies have also shown workplaces that embrace each employee as an individual and train these individuals to identify and enhance their own strengths are poised to not just get more done, but also may dramatically improve corporate culture. In today's economy of ever-tightening job markets and increased workplace stress, focusing on the positive may soon be essential. And to share more with us on this is Mr. Alan Lee, the head of people at Aspire, a leading all-in-one finance operating system serving growing businesses in Southeast Asia. Hey Alan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Adrian. Thank you for having me.
So Alan, could we start by helping us to understand a bit about your background? And importantly, since we are talking about positive psychology, I'm very certain the listeners will be wondering, why should we listen to Alan? So could you help us to understand that as well?
Yes, sure. A quick introduction about myself. Yeah, I look after the people function over here in Aspire, which is a fintech company. I've been in different industries, mostly doing HR generalist roles. And, there is that kind of a nerdy side of me. So I happen to pursue a PhD in organization psychology, and that was mainly focused on positive psychology. Again, very passionate about linking this theory into the workplace. So really excited to share more about this.
So on the notion of positive psychology, could you help us to distill exactly how does that come into play for HR practitioner? Because for the uninitiated, if I were to ask anyone random on the street, I think they would see that positive psychology means just cheer up, just be happy, have happy thoughts. But I would imagine it would be probably more than that. So could you touch on that, and perhaps also to segue into how do you apply positive psychology as a HR practitioner?
So positive psychology itself is quite of a very wide umbrella term. So it's essentially using psychology's theory and kind of practice into like different areas using a positive lens. And in sometimes it could be applied to individual circumstances, how we make, what kind of triggers happiness at an individual level. But also there is a field or group of studies that apply psychology and positive psychology to organization setting. So that's where I think it would be more relevant to applying that in the works of HR.
Right. And could you help us to understand the journey of applying positive psychology? Obviously, although it is quite a historical theory and it has still been applied nowadays, but how has that evolution come about? And when did it start being infused into the workplace as a more serious matter?
I would say it's more like a recent thing, and it's an ongoing topic as well. Even within psychology itself, historically, psychology was applied to help people who are struggling to get back to the normal status, and even organization as well. Like organization psychology, widely been kind of practiced in many ways to help organizations that are struggling to kind of get back to the normal status. What positive psychology is trying to do is that normal status isn't enough, right? Then how can we get even better? Like, for example, at an individual level, like how can you have more sense of meaning, of fulfillment in your life? And same with organization as well. So how can an organization really thrive and get even better than just becoming normal again? So, and all that is kind of a recent trend. I mean, it has been for a recent few years, but mostly around, I would say, studies and research. And I would say like applying that into actual workplaces is relatively new and it's ongoing. And I think it will be more and more in the future.
Could you also give us some examples, some granular examples on how a HR leader could really look at applying positive psychology in any aspect of the work across the organization?
Yeah, so applying positive psychology to me is not a single initiative that is specific to positive psychology. I think positive psychology is more like a lens or philosophy on how we approach issues within the organization or how we tackle our challenges. I mean, you mentioned when we started that now a lot of leaders believe that more engaged worker would really help the productivity of the company. But I've been working with a lot of leaders, but I can tell you that some of them really had a fundamental different belief, meaning their belief was perhaps we need to control more to get more out of our employees. We need to monitor to really get more out of employees. I think a good example would be recent discussions around return to work and how we view remote work. There are still a large group of leaders or management that would view that we need to bring back our employees back to the office because we need to see them. We need to kind of work with them in person, unless it's not going to be productive. So, like in everyday decisions, I would say, which lens are you applying? Which philosophy are you applying? I think that's where I think the positive psychology application would impact the most.
And based on your personal experience in trying to apply positive psychology at the workplace, are there any generic or general challenges that you see that may make the application a bit challenging?
Yes, so I think it goes back to perhaps the previous question. I think it's, again, rather than a technical level, I see this more like a philosophical approach on how we think about human beings, right? And and when are our employees actually filling or self-fulfilling? And that again has a very different view on different people. Um, for let's say instance salary or compensation, um, like it is very easy to assume that salary is going to be the most important thing to motivate employees and etc. Whereas, like for example, a lot of studies in positive psychology suggest that the most effective way to actually motivate people is not about the salary itself, but for other things around, which is more softer in a sense. It could be the sense of growth, sense of achievement, sense of relatedness. So again, I think even in these kind of simple examples, you could see how different we could approach differently in the most fundamental important issue of an organization, which is motivation, let's say. So again, like it could be, and if you work with a culture or leader who have a very strong belief in a different way, it's going to be very difficult to kind of apply your kind of approach into day-to-day workplace.
Got it. So it's really trying to put a lens across and to also understand that there is no one size fit all approach, especially when it comes to dealing with people, and in knowing that each individual may have different kind of motivation, and that in itself may help you to apply or even to approach whichever problem statement that you have in mind very differently. Are there any significant case studies, perhaps the things that you have researched upon, or even within your personal workplace, of such, I wouldn't say implementation or application, but perhaps to really apply the notion and the concept and this way of thinking into the workplace that has really brought about a significant impact, especially towards the business bottom line?
So first of all, I definitely agree with you that there's no one size fits all approach, but I think also the benefit of having that lens or background or that kind of theory is that there is also that overarching kind of theories on what clicks human beings, what really kind of motivates employees. And for instance, I mean, this is more kind of going back to the fundamentals of positive psychology. Um, when we, in positive psychology, when we define happiness, there are two aspects of happiness. So one is what we call the pleasure, like feeling good, and those type of, and not having pains and etc. So that's the pleasure side of happiness. And then there is the other side of happiness, which is the meaning. So people also get happy by a sense of meaning. And in workplaces, it shows that it actually provides some good context for employees to feel meaning in their life, which is a unique provision that we as a workplace provide. And again, there's a lot of researchers on meaning, and like one of the kind of theories that I really resonate well with is that there are three key parts of meaning that really helps people to really feel meaning. And the first is competence, second is relatedness, and third is autonomy. So if you understand that fundamental also human behavior, although one size may not fit all, but there are like generic kind of directions that you could also think about when you think about employee engagement, when you think about employee motivation and leadership and etc. So I just wanted to clarify that there is some also kind of common themes and overarching framework that we could use. Second, I would say the actual practical usage of it. So I would say like one very simple example is maybe employee survey. I know that a lot of companies does employee surveys now right now. And I mean, there are also like companies that doesn't do it. So I think first of all, it's good that like companies does these employee surveys. But what do you do out of this survey could be also different on how do you think about these things. And it also relates to what do you measure actually, or what kind of questions do you ask? And once that data is there, like how do you really tackle this or to address this challenge? So I think like using more framework around kind of, for me at least, like which I'm like really a believer of, like engagement worker being much more productive. Um, like I try to be more serious in really deep diving into employee engagement survey results and really kind of helping kind of our leaders to address those tackles, because I know that fundamentally like addressing those concerns would benefit our business as well.
And on that notion, of course, I would imagine for larger companies trying to gather all this different information could be pretty challenging. And we were just talking about employee engagement, but it could be a myriad of different things that you want to tap on. Are there new ways or means, or maybe some technologies that you're leveraging on in order to make all this easier possible, especially in a larger environment?
Yes, so technology, I mean, like I know that there's a lot of great technology out there. To be honest, I think there's a lot of opportunities for an HR technology. One thing that I would share with you an example is, as I mentioned, there are like a three drivers when it comes to our employees or generally human beings to feel meaning. So again, that's autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And one of the key factors is competence, which means you feel that you are recognized, you feel that you are being developed, you feel that you are competent in an area that you work on. And the best way to do it is via recognition. And if you think about recognition, there are a lot of technologies out there. Like for instance, there is I mean, like a lot of companies use HR software. The software that we're using at the moment has this ability to give instant recognition that is shared publicly within the whole organization. I think that really, I mean, it might be a very small thing and it's not even that high tech, but having that platform to give praises or shout outs to employees on a real time basis on a wider scale, that definitely kind of helped to build that culture of recognition and appreciation.
And given that we are not officially out, but towards the tail end of the pandemic, which has brought about many different other work practices like remote work, hybrid work, etc., how has that impacted perhaps this positive psychology philosophy in HR and the workplace in general?
Yes, so that's really good kind of topic as well. I go back to that model, right? So autonomy, competence, and relatedness. There was a few interesting research during this period. So compared to pre-pandemic, um, there was a lot of drop in the relatedness, meaning people didn't have enough connections with other people in person, so that dropped. But what was really increasing during the time was the autonomy part. So people felt that they have control of the where to work, how to work, much more than the pre-pandemic world, which I think was really kind of helping in a way, in an unintended way, in terms of employee engagement and sense of meaning as well. People during that period had a lot more sense that they have control over their life, which positively resulted in autonomy. So I think this like really unintentional finding. I really hope that a lot of organizations learn from that, and how do we then continue that increase of autonomy in the post-pandemic world, which I think is going to be an interesting topic, but definitely a lesson learned during the pandemic.
And with all this evolution right now, how do you see moving forward as we continue to grapple with what the future may bring? Because right now we are even seeing things like AI taking another infusion into the workplace. I'm even seeing, in fact, this came some time back before ChatGPT even came about, where you have AI bots, therapists, and all that kind of stuff. Could are all this automation driving us in the right direction? Because in some way, they do help us to cater to, I would say, a wider audience and also to fulfill each of their requirements. But at the same time, does that take away the necessary human element and might perhaps skew us in not exactly the direction that we want to head towards?
Yeah, I think to be honest, it's a bit early to tell, because from a long-term perspective, like even the most expert in this world probably cannot predict what this new trend and technology will kind of bring us. But I think what's sure, at least in the short term, is that there will be a lot of kind of trials in different organizations, and depending on what you try differently could impact a lot in a very positive way. Like even for like this new AI technology that we're kind of using at the moment. So in the long term, like there is definitely, I think, a good case that it might impact some of our roles and etc. But in the short term, I do think it's a really an amazing tool to really increase our productivity, and most importantly, really reduce some of the mundane work that we did. So an interesting example, I did with my team what we call the Chat GPT challenge. So we had like a 3 weeks in a row of a ChatGPT challenge. So first week was the writing challenge, where everyone kind of tried to write something using ChatGPT and improvising and helping their work. It could be around employee messaging, it could be for our recruiters, a candidate reach out, it could be for our trainers, a training script, right? And we are doing a series of kind of these kind of challenges just to make sure that we're familiar with it and we understand how it could value our work. And so far, it really turned out well, in a way that people are using in very creative ways and really helping them in their own work. So definitely in a short term, I think it would help. And I do actually believe every organization who embrace this technology at a wider scale would really help their productivity, at least in the short to midterm. But again, long-term impact, I think we need to be very agile and to kind of see how things kind of could change in the future.
I'll be happy to invite you for a future episode to understand more about your ChatGPT experiment, and perhaps that would form a bedrock on how HR departments in other organizations would really be able to tap on it and to drive change management to get more people to adopt this free tool. Now, one last thing before we let you go, which I'm really interested to get your take on. You personally are very invested and have a lot of knowledge and insights in positive psychology because your graduate, postgrad, and PhD is all in this specific field. Now, not every HR practitioner, and I dare say not many of our listeners, would have that academic rigor in organizational psychology and positive psychology. But if they want to really look at, okay, this may be a philosophy I want to adopt, what are some of your recommendations to them outside of pursuing the same academic path as yourself?
Yes, so I think that's also the benefit of the technology nowadays. And if I go back, I don't think I would have pursued the same path, PhD, because there is so much knowledge out there, so many courses. One of the things I enjoyed the most, which was outside of my PhD course, was there is this like one of the most famous positive psychology courses from Yale University, which is open to public. So you could literally listen into the full semester course of the best positive psychology. So, and it's all free and you could access it. So if you're interested, I think there's a tons of like resources out there you could reach. There's plenty of books and etc. But I think before we even go there, I think it's also important to really think and reflect yourself. whether this really resonate with you, because again, it might be a very different view from some of the other practitioners. So I would suggest you try to kind of maybe try out a few courses to see whether this is right for you. And if that's right, I think you could even go deeper, which again, there's so many resources out there that you can leverage.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll put that into the show notes. And with that, Alan, thank you so much for coming on the show today to share more with us about positive psychology, the philosophy behind it, some of the approaches, some of the practicality, and how it will benefit the workforce. Hopefully, some of our listeners would take a different take on how all this will apply to their workforce, and hopefully, they will really look into this consideration as well. And with that, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the chat. Thank you, Adrian.